Time for the Christmas Carol prediction question. Now, the great news for you is I'm going to start with the thesis statement, and the thesis statement will fit any question. So if this one doesn't come up, and I've got about a 50% accuracy rate, so if it doesn't come up, the thesis statement is going to match exactly. The thesis statement always contains 3 ideas, and they are always about Dickens' point of view. So, why is he writing this novel? So at number 1, anti-Malthusian. Malthus proposed that the poor were a danger to society because they consumed much more than they gave back. The more poor people you got, the more danger society was in. And that's where the poor laws came in, creating the workhouse, making the poor suffer and treat them as idle and deserving of their hardship. At number 1, we've got the Malthusian view that the poor were a burden on society and that they shouldn't be allowed to reproduce. So the idea was you didn't help the poor, because if you did, everyone got poorer because the poor just consumed resources. That's why we have the workhouse and the poor laws and the treadmill and the prisons. Dickens is totally against that, and that's what the novel is trying to campaign against. But then he introduces Scrooge, this terrible old miser, and shows that if even this horrific figure can redeem himself and transform, then all of us, the readers, can transform and then change our political views about the way we treat the poor. We will transform society. But how does he persuade us of that? He releases this novel at Christmas. It's about Christmas and it's about family. Family is the mechanism he uses to persuade us to embrace wider society. He basically says the poor are like extended members of your family. That's why Scrooge takes on the Cratchit family through Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit. Those 3 purposes remain the same whatever the question, and so it fits whatever the question is. Now, my prediction for 2025 is that it will be about family, and let's see how this will make a paragraph thesis statement. So, we're focusing on family. Dickens shows how Scrooge's transformation depends on family and Christmas. This redemption attacks the Malthusian view of the poor and the poor laws. Setting and publishing the novel at Christmas allows him to encourage social responsibility through charity and goodwill. Just as Scrooge is transformed by family, we can redeem society by treating the poor as our own family. That is a beyond grade 9 thesis statement which you can 100% steal. Why that is going to get you the grade is it deals with Dickens' ideas, and the author's ideas automatically start at grade 7. It is not hard to get the grades, you just have to know stuff. And that is the stuff you have to know. Let's now see the quotes for this essay, but if you would like the whole essay, it's in the link in the description. So notice that I have put the quotes in chronological order. The reason for that is that you can see how things change through the novel, and that reveals Dickens' ideas, how he's trying to persuade us. When you choose the extract, well, you've got no choice, have you? When the examiners give you the extract, if you start with the extract, it's kind of difficult to dart about. You've got 2 choices. One, you can do the extract and then, go to the beginning and then show how things change at the end. That will get you the marks. Or you can start your essay at the beginning and then slip in the extract where it fits chronologically. You're allowed to do that. I know the exam paper says start with the extract, but that isn't in the mark scheme, so the examiners simply don't care. What they do care about is that you write a coherent and persuasive argument, and that's very difficult to do when you start with the extract. It's very easy to do when you follow the idea through the story. It's up to you, but these are the 16 quotes that are going to help you smash it. You only need 13 for a grade 9, so I'm giving you some bonus. And as usual, there are more quotes from the ending, because the ending always gives you the author's final ideas, always gives you the top grades. We start with the classic description of Scrooge with this wonderful list with loads of sibilants. Scrooge a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. And this gives us the morality of the novel. He is a sinner, and Scrooge is going to represent how the poor laws treat the poor, and so the poor laws are sinful. Scrooge is going to be redeemed. We're going to see why the poor laws are wrong. Stop society being a sinful sinner or a covetous sinner, and transform it like we transform Scrooge. Then we go straight in with his political message about the poor law. He's explicit about it because Scrooge uses these very words when he won't give money to the charity men. He asks, it's the poor law, the workhouses, the prisons in full vigour. A lovely word which means, are they really effective and robust and energetic? And that shows how much he wants to treat the poor with cruelty. But it's not just him, these are society's solutions. And that's how Dickens makes his political message. We're not just going to change Scrooge, people. We're going to change society. Come on, it's Christmas. And I'm going to show you how the poor are like a family. Where does the family come in here? Well, this is where he introduces Fred. Fred is there. Do you remember all that bar humbug stuff? This is where Scrooge is refusing to go to Fred's party. He is dismissing family, and Dickens does that to show how dismissing family is the same as dismissing the poor in society. He gets worse. Dickens wants to dramatise how cruel this view is when Dickens says, better die and decrease the surplus population. This language, the surplus population, is the language of economics. It is the language of Malthus. Where's he gone? I didn't put Malthus up there. Oh my God. Oh no, I couldn't because he's not a quote, is he? Right, so this links to Malthus. Oh, give me a heart attack. And we're definitely putting that in our essay because Malthus is the economist who's given us this justification for treating the poor so cruelly, not like your own social family. The next family figure that we meet is actually Marley. Now, Marley's older than Scrooge, and he acts as Scrooge's role model, his father figure. He turns up to say to Scrooge, I wear the chain I forged in life, I made it link by link. This links to the Christian message of the novel. So poor old Marley can't get into heaven. He is doomed to a kind of purgatory where he walks the earth. But he's found a loophole. If he can help Scrooge redeem himself, then he might be able to get to heaven. What's the message? The message is, if my novel, dear reader, can help redeem you by making you more considerate and treating the poor like your family, then you too will get into heaven. Next, we are taken by the ghost of Christmas past into Scrooge's childhood. This gives us a psychological explanation for his meanness, and the psychology depends on family. Look how his father treated him. He took him away and sent him away to school on his own and didn't let him back even in the Christmas holidays. Contrast that to Scrooge's sister, Fan, who is allowed to stay with the family. She is treated properly and Scrooge isn't. And the ghost's words are quite interesting. He says, a solitary child, Scrooge, neglected by his friends, is left there still. Not just his father, but his friends. Society could be a friend to the poor, but it has chosen not to with the poor law and the workhouses. But let's look at the word still. The ghost doesn't mean it's still happening here in this memory that we're visiting. No, he means to the adult Scrooge, this little child is still inside you. It's the way you were treated as a young boy that means you have turned into this horrible miser. It is because of the neglect that you felt. In other words, society is making life for the poor loads worse. We could flip that. Then we have the visit of Fan later. And she says, Father is so much kinder than he used to be that home is like heaven. She invites him back home. But we never get a reconciliation between Scrooge and his father. Why not? Because we suspect that doesn't happen. His father has just stopped being really cruel to him, but it doesn't seem as though he's extended any love. This is going to be important because throughout this novel, Scrooge is going to replace the father figure that he had, Marley, and change it to become a father figure himself. And so Dickens' main message is going to be, in order to redeem Scrooge, I'm going to make him like a father to other people, to society. Dear reader, you too have to become father figures to society. The next father figure is an employer. It's who Scrooge is apprenticed to, Fezziwig. An apprenticeship in Dickens' time lasted 7 whole years. So you can see how he is a father figure for a decent chunk of time. And he says of Fezziwig, the happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune. So Fezziwig becomes this massive role model. So our question then is, well, if he had that role model for 7 years, how did he still turn out as a miser? Well, it's because of the great cruelty of being abandoned. This is another way of dramatising how important the father figure is, and it's also a way of dramatising how awful it is to be isolated as the poor are. Then we have his opportunity to have a family of his own, and he blows it because of his obsession with security and money. This is what his fiancée Belle says to him, another idol has displaced me, a golden one. Scrooge has taken the lack of love that he felt as a child and replaced it with the security of thinking money will look after me. And by doing that, he neglects everybody else. This is the same as Malthusian economics. We introduce the poor law because we're afraid of the poor and what they're going to take from us in resources. We are exactly like Scrooge. So by giving us this image of what Scrooge has lost, it gives Scrooge an opportunity to try and regain it by forging those family relationships. He's too old now to marry, but he's not too old to become a father figure. Interestingly for me though, the meeting with Belle is not the thing that is most important. It's when he then goes to see Belle as an older woman with a daughter of her own. And this is what he says. He looks at the daughter sitting on the father's lap and he notices that she might have been a springtime in the haggard winter of his life. So it's not just family and the loss of family that's upset him, it's the fact that he never became a father. He will never have a daughter like Belle's daughter. And that is the turning point when he starts to think about becoming a father himself. He's so upset about this that he actually attacks the ghost. Obviously it doesn't work because the ghost is supernatural, but Dickens does that to dramatise that this is a massive turning point. And then he dramatises that again when we visit, in stave 3, the Cratchit family. Putting it in the middle, because there are 5 staves, putting it in the middle is Dickens' way of saying, look, the most important thing in my novel, it's the family. Let's examine the Cratchits. And you can see how they support each other despite their poverty. The other thing we can see is this is the moment where Scrooge thinks, I should be like a father. Who to? To Tiny Tim. He looks at Tiny Tim, he can see that Tiny Tim is weak, he's an invalid, and he's underfed. That's obviously the great message of this huge Christmas feast. That's all described ironically. They're eating a tiny meal. Tiny Tim isn't going to live, thinks Scrooge, so he asks the ghosts, tell me if Tiny Tim will live. And then we have this genius moment where the ghosts picks out Dickens' words and uses them against him. He says, if he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Dickens is taking the Malthusian view and the care for the family and juxtaposing them and saying, look, if you believe this about how we treat the poor, then this is what you believe about young, vulnerable children in real families that you might know. You are happy for them to die. In fact, you think it is the right thing because that will decrease the surplus population. That's the role of the poor law and the workhouse. So this revelation happens right at the middle in stave 3, and it links all of Dickens' messages directly to the idea of family. If the question is about Christmas, it's easy to link what we've done about family to it, because obviously this moment is Christmas time. That's the Cratchit Christmas that gives him this revelation. So now we have another moment in stave 3. We can see how crucial that stage is. He sees the ghosts hiding under the Ghost of Christmas Past's robe, ignorance and want. Ignorance is the boy, want is the girl, want means poverty. And Dickens is saying, look, it's not just about money. We can't just chuck money at the poor. We must educate them. If we educate the poor, then they will be able to get better employment. They will lift themselves out of poverty. Dickens actually wanted to write a pamphlet about teaching poor children. He wanted a political campaign. The problem was he was short of cash. And so instead of writing that political pamphlet, he chucked it and said, right, I've got 30 days, because this was November, I've got 30 days to write a bestseller about Christmas. Bosh, I need to make some dollar. Except it was pounds. So off he went, and in 30 days he wrote this book, probably his most famous ever, in 30 days. God, what a genius this man was. But at the back of his mind, he had this thing, look, we've got to educate the poor so they can help themselves. And that's why these bizarre figures of ignorance and want suddenly appear from the ghost's robes. I mean, they're not essential to the plot in any way. If they weren't in the story, no one would care. But Dickens cares, because his message is, the poor are like our children. We must look after them, not just with money, but with education. If you don't, he says, beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom. Yes, so a massive hyperbolic warning. The poor will rise up against you, they'll steal from you, they'll mug you, they'll rob you in your houses, they'll beat you up, they'll kill you, and they'll probably start a revolution. Next, we have his transformation. Now, you could get lost in the weeds of Stave 4, looking at the ghost of Christmas yet to come. That's not really going to help you with family. And so I'm ignoring the ghost of Christmas yet to come, other than I'm going to say, hey, he helped transform Scrooge. But my main argument, because this is about family and Christmas, is that that transformation didn't happen when he finds his gravestone, when he sees his dead body, when he finds that all his stuff is being nicked by the laundry woman and the undertaker's man and the charwoman. No, that's not what changes his mind. It's family. The family of the Cratchits. It's Stave 3. Calm down, Mr. Salles. Right, so now we get the decision to buy the prize turkey. Who for? The Cratchits. Now what's crucial here is he doesn't tell the Cratchits it's from him. He wants it to be anonymous. Why? Because this is the message that society is like our family. And if you help the poor, obviously you're not going to be able to tell them all, hey, look, I voted for no workhouses. That would be ludicrous. Yeah, so it's not about getting the recognition from the people you help. It's about just knowing you've done the right thing, just as you would feel with your own family. Little bit of autobiography for you. When Dickens was 12, his father had finally got into so much debt that he was arrested and sent to debtor's prison. But in Dickens' time, this wasn't just as tragic as that. If your father went to prison, you all went to prison, like the whole family, until the father could pay back. So the family went to live in the prison. They lost their house. Where was this house the last time that Dickens had money as a kid? Camden Town. Coincidentally, where I grew up. So there you go. Dickens decides to put the Cratchits in his own family home. This is his way of signalling how important that family is. Important to the novel, important to Scrooge's transformation, and psychologically important to himself. Because that's the last time he was happy as a kid. He didn't actually go and live in the prison with his father. It was even worse for him. He was sent out to earn the money to pay off his dad's debts. And he had to work in a tanning factory at 12 years old. I won't go into that. It was disgusting. It was horrible. He had to live away from home. He was all alone at 12 years old. Anyway, happy ending because he became awesome afterwards, didn't he? This is how Scrooge becomes awesome afterwards. He goes to Fred's and he describes the entertainment as wonderful. He repeats that loads of times, and then wonderful with a hyphen and emphasising it, happiness. What's Dickens' message? You will find happiness when you embrace your family. What's that got to do with society? Society will find happiness when we embrace the poor as part of our family, and we have the social responsibility to educate them and help them. And this, again, is why he ends the novel with the words of Tiny Tim, God bless us everyone, and the focus to Tiny Tim, who did not die. Hurrah! He was a second father. Becoming a father is what this whole journey has been about. And remember, this is a metaphor for how we, the reader, must be fathers to society, fathers to the poor. You have now smashed beyond grade 9. If you would like to revise from that essay, it is in the link in the description. It's on my website, mrssallesteachersenglish.com, and it's super cheap. However, it ain't Christmas and you might not be feeling generous and you don't want to buy me a coffee, you don't want my essay, in which case you want another essay on Scrooge. And that is the one coming up next. It's free.